สวัสดีค่ะเรามาพบกันอีกใน Little House in the Big Wood เกษียณเรียนภาษาอังกฤษค่ะ Practice English ด้วยการอ่านตอนนี้เป็น Chapter ที่ 8 Part 2 แล้วค่ะ Then they put on their beautiful white stockings that they had knit of fine cotton thread in lacy, open-work patterns, and they buttoned up their best shoes. They held each other with their corsets. Aunt Dorothy pulled as hard as she could on Aunt Ruby's corset strings, and then Aunt Dorothy hung on to the foot of the bed while Aunt Ruby pulled on hers. Pull, Ruby, pull, Aunt Dorothy said, breathless. Pull harder. So Aunt Ruby braced her feet and pulled harder. Aunt Dorothy kept measuring her waist with her hands, and at last she gasped. I guess that's the best you can do, she said. Caroline says Charles could span her wrist with his hand when they were married. Caroline was Laura's ma, and when she heard this, Laura felt proud. Then Aunt Ruby and Aunt Dorothy put on their flannel petticoats and their plain petticoats and their stiff, starched white petticoats with knit lace all around the flounces, and they put on their beautiful dresses. Aunt Dorothy's dress was a sprigged print, dark blue, with sprigs of red flower and green leaves sticks upon it. The back skirt was buttoned down the front with black buttons, which looked so exactly like juicy big blackberry that Laura wanted to taste them. Aunt Ruby's dress was white-colored calico, covered all over with a feathery pattern in lighter white color. It's buttoned with gold-colored buttons, and every button had a little castor and a tree carved on it. Aunt Dorothy's pretty white collar was fastened in front with a large round cameo pin, which had a lady's head on it. But Aunt Ruby pinned her collar with a red rose made of sealing wax. She had made itself on the head of a darning needle, which had a broken eye, so it couldn't be used as a needle anymore. They looked lovely, sailing over the floor so smoothly with their large, round skirts. Their little waists rose up tight and slender in the middle, and their cheeks were red, and their eyes bright under the wigs of shining sleek hair. Ma was beautiful too, in her dark green derain, with the little lips that looked like strawberries scattered over it. The skirt was ruffled and fronts and wrapped and trimmed with knots of dark green ribbon, and nestling at her throat with a gold pin. The pin was flat, as long and as wide as Laura's two biggest fingers, and it was carved all over and scored on the edge. Ma looked so rich and fine that Laura was afraid to touch her. People had begun to come. They were coming on foot through the snowy woods with their lanterns, and they were driving up to the door in sleds and in wagons. Sleigh bells would jingle all the time. The big room filled with tall boots and swinging skirts, and over so many babies were lying in rows on Grandma's bed. Uncle James and Aunt Libby had come with their little girls, whose name was Laura Ingalls too. The two Lauras leaned on the bed. The two Lauras leaned on the bed and looked at the babies, and the other Laura said her baby was prettier than baby Carrie. She is not either, Laura said. Carrie's the prettiest baby in the whole world. No, she isn't, the other Laura said. Yes, she is. No, she isn't. Ma came sailing over in her Friday lane and said sorry, Laura. So neither Laura said anything more. Uncle George was blowing his bugle. It made a loud, ringing sound in the big room, and Uncle George joked and laughed and danced, blowing the bugle. Then Pa took his fiddle out of its box and began to play, and all the couples stood in squares on the floor and began to dance when Pa called the figures. Grand right and left, Pa called out, and all the skirts began to swirl, and all the boots began to stamp. The circles went round and round, all the skirts going one way and all the boots going the other way, and hands clasping and parting high up in the air. Swing your partners, Pa called, and each gave out to the lady on the left. They all did as Pa said. Laura watched Ma's skirt away swaying and her little waist bending and her dark head bowing, and she thought Ma was the loveliest dancer in the world. The fiddle was singing, "Oh, you Buffalo girls, aren't you coming out tonight? Aren't you coming out tonight? Aren't you coming out tonight? Oh, you Buffalo girls, aren't you coming out tonight to dance by the light of the moon?" The little circle and the big circles went round and round, and the skirts swirled and the boots stamped, and partners bowed and separate and met and bowed again. In the kitchen, Grandma was all by herself, stirring the boiling syrup in the big brass kettle. She stirred in time to the music. By the back door was a pail of clean snow, and sometimes Grandma took a spoonful of syrup from the kettle and poured it on some of the snow in a saucer. Laura watches the dancers again. Pa was praying. The Irish washerwoman, now he called, "Dosie, ladies, dosie do, come down heavy on your heel and toe." Laura could not keep her feet still. Uncle George looked at her and laughed. Then he caught her by the hand and did a little dance with her in the corner. She liked Uncle George. Everybody was laughing over by the kitchen door. They were dragging Grandma in from the kitchen. Grandma's dress was beautiful too, a dark blue calico with autumn-colored leaves scattered over it. Her cheeks were pink from laughing, and she was shaking her head. The wooden spoon was in her hand. I can't lift the syrup, she said. But Pa began to play the Arkansas Traveler, and everybody began to clap in time to the music. So Grandma bowed to them and all did a few steps by herself. She could dance as prettily as any of them. The clapping almost drowned the music of Pa's fiddle. Suddenly, Uncle George did a pigeon wing and bowing low before Grandma to begin to jig. Grandma toasted her spoon to somebody. She put her hands on her hips and faced Uncle George, and everybody shouted Grandma was jigging. Laura clapped her hands in time to the music. With all the other clapping hands, the fiddle sang as it had never sung before. Grandma's eyes were snapping and her cheeks were wet, and underneath her skirts her heels were clicking as far as the thumping of Uncle George's boots. Everybody was excited. Uncle George kept on jigging, and Grandma kept on facing him, jigging too. The fiddle did not stop. Uncle George began to breathe loudly, and he wiped sweat off his forehead. Grandma's eyes twinkled. You can't beat her, George, somebody shouted. Uncle George jiggled faster. He jigged twice as fast as he had been jigging. So did Grandma. Everybody cheered again. All the women were laughing and clapping their hands, and all the men were teasing George. George did not care, but he did not have breath enough to laugh. He was jigging. Pa's blue eyes were snapping and sparkling. He was standing up, watching George and Grandma, and the bow danced over the fiddle strings. Laura jumped up and down and squared and clapped her hands. Grandma kept on jigging, her hands on her hips, and her chin was up, and she was smiling. George kept on jigging, but his boots did not thump as loudly as they had thumped at first. Grandma's heel kept on clacking gaily. A drop of sweat dripped off George's forehead and shone on his cheek. All at once, he threw up both arms and gasped, "I'm beat!" He stopped jigging. Everybody made a terrific noise, shouting and yelling and stamping, cheering Grandma. Grandma jigged just a little minute more, then she stopped. She laughed in gasps. Her eyes sparkled just like Pa's when he laughed. George was laughing too, and wiping his forehead on his lips. Suddenly, Grandma stopped laughing. She turned and ran as fast as she could into the kitchen. The fiddle had stopped playing. All the women were talking at once and all the men teasing George. But Everybody was still for a minute when Grandma looked like that. Then she came to the door between the kitchen and the big room and said, "The syrup is waking. Come and help yourselves." Then everybody began talking and laughed again. They all hurried to the kitchen for plates and outdoors to fill the plate with snow. The kitchen door was open and the cold air came in. Outdoors, the stars were frosty in the sky and the air nipped Laura's cheek and nose. Her breath was like smoke. She and other Laura and all the other children scooped up clean snow with their plate. Then they went back into the crowd kitchen. Grandma stood by the brass kettle and, with a big wooden spoon, she poured hot syrup on each plate of snow. It cooled into soft candy, and as fast as it cooled, they ate it. They could eat all they want. The maple sugar never hurt anybody. There was plenty of syrup in the kettle and plenty of snow outdoors. As soon as they ate one plate full, they filled their plate with snow again, and Grandma poured more syrup on it. When they had eaten the soft maple candy until they could eat no more of it, then they helped themselves from the long table loaded with pumpkin pies and dry berry pies and cookies and cakes. There was salt raisin bread too, and cold boiled pork and pickle. Oh, how soft the pickle were! They all ate till they could hold no more, and then they began to dance again. But Grandma watched the syrup in the kettle. Many times she took a little of it out into a saucer and stirred it round and round. Then she shook her head and poured the syrup back into the kettle. The other room was loud and merry with the music of the fiddle and the noise of the dancings. At last, as Grandma stirred the syrup in the saucer turned into a little against like sand, and Grandma called, "Quick girls, it's raining." Aunt Ruby and Aunt Dorsey and Ma left the dance and come running. They set out pans, big pans and little pans, and as fast as Grandma filled them with the syrup, they set out more. They set the filled ones away to cool into maple sugar. Then Grandma said, "Now bring the patty pans for the children." There was a patty pan, or at least a broken cup or a saucer, for every little girl and boy. They all watched anxiously while Grandma let out the syrup. Perhaps there will not be enough. Then somebody would have to be unselfish and polite. There was just enough syrup to go round. The last scraping of the brass kettle exactly filled the very last patty pan. Nobody was left out. The fiddling and the dancing went on and on. Laura and the other Laura stood around and watched the dancers. Then they sat down on the floor in a corner and watched. The dancing was pretty and the music so gay that Laura knew she could never get tired of it. All the beautiful skirts went swirling by, and the boots went stamping, and the fiddle kept on singing gaily. Then Laura woke up, and she was laying across the foot of Grandma's bed. It was morning. Ma and Grandma and baby Carrie were in the bed. Pa and Grandpa were sleeping rolled up in a blanket on the floor by the fireplace. Mary was now way inside. She was sleeping with Aunt Dorsey and Aunt Ruby in their bed. Soon everybody was getting up. There were pancakes and maple syrup for breakfast, and then Pa brought the horses and sled to the door. He helped Ma and Clary in, while Grandpa picked up Mary and Uncle George picked up Laura, and they will toss them over the edge of the sled into the straw. Pa took in the ropes around them, and Grandpa and Grandma and Uncle George stood calling goodbye, goodbye, as they rode away in the big woods going home. The sun was warm, and the rotting horses threw up bits of muddy snow with their hoofs. Behind the sled, Laura could see their footprint, and every footprint had gone through the thin snow in the mud. Before night, Pa said, "We'll see the last of the sugar snow." และแล้ว chapter ที่ 8 ก็จบลง เดี๋ยวเรามารับฟังกันใหม่ใน chapter ที่ 9 ว่าจะเป็นตอนอะไรต่อไปสำหรับวันนี้สวัสดีค่ะ Goodbye everybody